Hello and welcome to another LSB Film podcast. I hope you are very well today, and today I have two incredible guests. One in the studio and one on a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. Oh, how nice it must be. First up is Bob Seys. Now, Bob Seys, as many of you know who follow my channel, is a local legend in Thetford and surrounding areas. And Bob has a rare gift of being able to connect with people. He is someone that knows the value of truth, hope, and standing tall in the face of adversity. He has poured his time, effort, and soul into helping other people out, spreading awareness, and always vibrating on some ridiculously high frequency. I don't know how he does it. Then, calling from sunnier shores, we've got Graham Moore, another legend. This one wielding a pen sharper than any sword. Graham has spent years tackling injustice, challenging the system to serve real justice, and mastering the English Constitution. From dodging unjust laws to helping others win in court, he has proven that knowledge is power, and he knows how to use it. In this episode, we dive into Graham's latest wins, the way in which he's helped people navigate the courts, and what that might mean for our very own Zach after his recent dust-up with the old bill. And when I say we, I mostly mean they. This might be the quietest I've ever been on the mic. So, without further ado, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
So, yes, welcome both of you, both Bob Seys and the wonderful Graham Moore to the show.
Thank you for inviting me back on.
My absolute pleasure. And it's a pleasure to have Bob Seys with us because he's been a big part of LSB. So, on and on, you have.
I don't know. I like to have a rant.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And he likes sailing as well, which is a positive.
Absolutely.
Always a bonus. We have got our life jackets just in case.
Yeah,
turbulence.
We have.
Do you get turbulence? So, yeah. So I hear that you've been doing wonderful work and you've actually assisted a bloke in court and won with regards to. Well, actually, you tell me what it's with regards to.
Right. So again, I want everyone to understand that the basic principle of our Constitution is you have the right to self-defence, right? You have many rights, but that's one of the basics. So just to explain to people what particularly happened, a guy was burgled. There was an ongoing harassment campaign by his neighbours. I'll put it in a different way, who just happened to be a minority group, right? So the police have not intervened in any way against this harassment, but he gets burgled. His wife, his kids are in the house. He's very angry. They've stolen his stuff. He rings the police up. The police come along. They order him out of the house. He comes out of the house, and in his pocket he's got an extendable baton, but it's not extended. It's just in his pocket, right? They've then pulled out CS gas or whatever it was, pepper spray, and started going all through this silly nonsense towards him. Bearing in mind, he's the one who's rung the police because he's been burgled and his wife and kids are in the house. And then they've seen this sticking out of his pocket and basically arrested him for having an offensive weapon in a public place. Bearing in mind, they've just pulled him out of his house or asked him to come out of his house. It's not extended. It's in his pocket. He's only got it in there for defensive reasons because he's been burgled and this harassment going on against his home and his family. So they arrest him. He did do some things wrong here because he spoke to the police. Normally, I wouldn't have got involved, but I looked at everything he had said and he didn't stop say, and he shouldn't have said it, but he did say it. But in some ways, it was a positive. He kept saying, "This is not offensive. This is defensive," right? And it wasn't extended. He wasn't waving it around in the street or anything like that, right? So there was no other issues with it. Anyway, they carried on. he got in contact with me. They told him, we're going to get you 3 years. He's never been to prison before in his life. He's a hard-working man. He's a motor mechanic, right? So an up-and-standing fella, no issues with him locally, etc. And so I said to him, what you got to do is sack your solicitor, sack your barrister. I'll write you out a case stated to tell you what your defence is. And you must plead not guilty. You don't say anything. If there's any more interaction, no comment. And when it gets to court, not guilty. And you must go for a jury trial, right? And you explain to a jury what has happened. And I'll tell you now, you're going to get him not guilty all day long, right? So he did sack his solicitor. He did sack his barrister. He then got another barrister come on board for another solicitor, and he presented the case statement and the defence that I'd put to him. They was a bit ooh-harry in it, and he went, no, listen, I'm not having it. Basically, this is my defence, whether you like it or not, right? So it gets to a jury trial. This has gone on, it causes a lot of stress for people. It gets to the court case, which was in a Crown Court, meaning a higher court than the magistrates. The judge is there, everyone's there. They're about to swear the jury in for the trial, and the judge said, "What is your defence to this?" Right. So the barristers got up and said, basically, self-defence, English Bill of Rights, blah 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 blah. Whatever he said in the background. The judge then starts arguing with the prosecution, which often happens in my cases or cases that I'm involved with. It happened with Charlie Stables, where the judge gets what's going on. To make a long story short, as they say, the judge didn't bring the jury in. He gave him a not guilty. That was it. That was the end of the case. The judge said not guilty, right? So the essence of the story for people to remember is the English Bill of Rights sets out, and I want people to remember my words, all and singular, right? So all of them rights are yours, or singular as individual rights. And one of the strongest rights we've got there, because they're all as strong as each other, is the absolute right to self-defence and the right to keep and bear arms for self-defence, defend yourself, your property and your family, right? In fact, it is a sin not to defend yourself, right? If you go back through history, you can read that. So the basis of it is, because it says you have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defence, all you're doing when you go into a court, if you've got any form of weapon, it doesn't matter what they describe as an offensive weapon, on your right to keep and bear arms, it is a defensive weapon. The state may want to call it an offensive weapon. You have the right to call it a defensive weapon. As long as you weren't out in the streets, if you've got a gun, you're waving it about, you're being silly or whatever. But that doesn't happen with responsible people, right? The only people who start doing anything like that are criminals, right? Or there'll be some sort of offence. So basically, the judge basically agreed and said that he didn't have it he didn't even have it extended. So how can it be offensive, right? And he would only have used it in a defensive way. He didn't threaten the police with it. He didn't threaten his neighbours and the minority group living next door to him. He didn't do any of them things. So therefore, the judge said not guilty.
Again, it was the police being coercive, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Getting them out onto the public so they can say, right, offensive weapon.
Right. So there's two. There's another case I've got as well. But just to make sure the audience is clear on this, the solicitors, and think about Lucy Connolly, think about Lucy Letby, think about all these things going on. The solicitors and barristers who are there to protect your rights, right? The same as members of parliament are in there to protect your rights. His solicitor and barrister, right, was telling him to plead guilty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you've got to stop this nonsense of listening to these people. By the way, the crocodile will eat them last, right? Solicitors and barristers and judges, if I went through the English Bill of Rights, it talks about subversion. It tells you in the preamble what it's about. It tells you in the heads of terms who were the people that were corrupting our rights. And it was the judges.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. All sworn their oath to the City of London.
Well, again, there's funny enough, I'm hoping to have a conversation with someone about the City of London, because if I told people what the real problem was and how simple it is to resolve, everyone would go, wow, right? I didn't know that. There's so many little things that people don't know, and you've only got to read through history to find it. So getting back, there's another case. I wouldn't say identical, but there's another guy in Nottingham. He's got the same situation. He was actually attacked by these, not the same, but another minority group. Again, working man, productive, got his own industrial unit. They was blocking in his unit for various reasons and causing all sorts of problems. They then attacked him. His face come out like that. I mean, literally, he, without swearing, he got a good idea off these people. He retreated into his unit and picked up a knife, right? They then started videoing with him with a knife, called the police. So the assailants have called the police, who have just beat him up. Police come along and arrest him for
Sounds
having
like BBC were there reporting it.
Well, that's exactly out of the situation.
Yeah.
And what they've done, they've then arrested him and they've told him you're going to get a minimum of 3 years, possibly 5 years, right? Because he's using a knife in effect in a defensive way. Not that he lashed out with it, but this guy is a little bit. He's one of our members, so they've arrested him on the way to the police station. They've took him to hospital because his face is out here, right? They've took all photos. They've got photos of the injuries, etc. They've then taken him to the police station. He's under arrest for bladed article and other issues that in relation to the knife. I can't remember what they said to him. Then what happened is he said they brought him in for interview, and he done exactly what I tell people do. He said no comment. They said, "Do you want a solicitor?" He said no comment. He didn't want a solicitor. He hasn't got a solicitor to this day or a barrister. He then went right away through the process. No comment, no comment, no comment. And I said, what happened then? He said, then they charged me and released me. I said, send me the paperwork. So he scanned the paperwork, sent me the paperwork, and I said, they haven't charged you. Where did you get that from? He said, that's what they told me. I said, well, I can tell you from your paperwork, they have given you unconditional bail, right, to report back on such and such a day. I think it's in August sometime, right, while they carry out investigations. Because you commented everything, they can't charge you with anything, right? They've released you on unconditional bail and basically just, said, come back and see us. And he said, so what happens now? I said, what happens now is you must go back on that day. Otherwise, you commit a separate offence, right, of a bail offence, basically not attending when you've been asked to once you've been bailed. So what he's doing now, he's waiting for that thing. And he said, what do I do then? I said, you say no comment. I said, the reason they never charged you and they give you unconditional bail is because you kept your mouth shut. You didn't sit there going, but I've done nothing wrong, right? These people do not care. As soon as you open your mouth, one word, right? You create a situation. I'll give you an example. I said this the other day. When they read out a list of questions that are asking you and you're no commenting, right, they will be the most incriminating questions you can imagine, right? And then they'll say to you, do you want a cup of tea? And you say, yeah. They then put that transcript and you answering a single question to the trial judge and say to the trial judge, he's answered one of our questions and not others. We want to put the whole list of questions to the jury and his answers. So then you're sitting in front of a jury and the prosecution you had this knife because you was going to do X, right? Now, that prosecutor wouldn't be able to say that, unless there was evidence of it. But because of that list of questions, he can say it. And because you said yes to a cup of tea, he can now put it to the jury and it starts to create a picture in their mind, right? Whereas if you had said no to the cup of tea, no comment all the way through, don't answer anything, because I always say to people, if you've got two females interviewing you, right, make them feel as awkward as possible and stare at their tits, right? And that will end the interview quicker, right? You're in there as adversaries. They're not in there as your friends, right? They are in there to convict you and put you in prison. They still go home to their families. You're the one who's going to get banged up, right? Don't say a word. It is your right to remain silent under English law. It is the state that must prosecute you. You are not supposed to be prosecuting yourself. So, cut a long story short, I'm writing out a full case stated for him. He's going for a full, again, not guilty, jury trial. And in his case, I expect them to drop everything, not to pursue it, because for the simple reason. So the difference between him and the other case is the guy was still talking, even though he didn't. I mean, normally if I say to him, if you said a word to them, if they say yeah, I say I can't help you, right? You've basically stitched yourself up. That's the biggest indication that people, and again, they all think they're clever. I know sometimes it's just nerves, right? And they always come out with this crap, and it is crap. I've done nothing wrong. You don't need to. You just have to open your mouth and you're going to prison, right? That's it. And people need to understand these people do not care. They don't care about justice. They don't care about any of them things. They only whack you behind the door. That's it. Lucy Colony is a prime, many others. Peter Lynch. I mean, he was a wonderful guy. I actually met him at Rotherham on a demo. He tried to get me to do St. Peter. This is no disrespect to him. He's died. He's not there to defend himself, etc. I'm not having a pop at him. But he said to me, come on our march. We're going to march down here. I said, Peter, if you do that, they're going to arrest you, right? What we're doing at the moment and where I am and my people who are with me, we are not going to be arrested because we have what's known as an assembly. It's a peaceful assembly. The police can't touch us, right? As soon as you step on that road, right, they're going to arrest you. And he did step on the road and he did get arrested. But what I'm saying is people just don't listen. It's really basic stuff.
That's a case in point. You're saying about keeping your mouth shut with the bloody solicitors and the lawyers. There was a lot of those cases connected to that Southport incident.
Yeah.
The ones that kept their mouth shut walked away.
Correct.
The ones that took the advice of the lawyer and said, oh, I can get you half of what they're going to try and give you.
Yeah.
Bang, they went to prison.
Yeah. No, you're bang on the money. So the people. So again, just to make sure everyone's aware of this, throughout our history and especially the English Bill of Rights, in the Declaration of Reasons, which everyone forgets about, there's a whole document about the Declaration of Reasons. It's a trilogy, right? So the Declaration of Reasons, the Declaration of Rights, which was 27 heads of terms, and the Bill of Rights, it tells you in the preamble what was the cause of the Glorious Revolution. What was the cause? And the cause was that the Privy Councillors and the officers of the state, including judges, were corrupt, right? It tells you what it was about. And you've got the exact same thing happening again, right? And yet, instead of people, like they'll listen to Chris, they'll listen to you, Bob, they'll listen, but all of a sudden you stick a barrister up who says, oh, how now, ground cow, this is what we're going to do, right? Oh, I'm here to help you, right? Once they start all that bullshit, right? A normal working man, all he's got to do is read his rights. And once he does, he can look at that barrister and say, you are talking shit. That's it. But you've got to have the bottle, right, to stand up and say, you are not who you say you are, right? You do not know my rights. You have never read the Bill of Rights. You've never read the Declaration. You are not there to assist me. You are there to put me behind a door, because part of your system, which is the justice system as a business, right, is about creating money, getting money off the government, taking your tax money. And the second bit, I think it's second only to the National Health Service, and the National Health Service is massive. I mean, the employees, there's only one group of people in the whole world that's bigger than the National Health Service, and that's the Chinese army. Right? So when you think about that, right, you understand what it is and what it does, but then think about the prison system. So everything associated with the prison system, which is attached to the state and the judiciary system, they need to keep that business system running.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are a product that they need inside that prison.
Yeah, the police feed the courts feed the prisons, and they're all private businesses. They're all private corporations.
All earning money out of their own, and the only person that loses out of it is the individual.
Yeah, it's the same with like the school education system and social services and all them. They're all in cahoots.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Yeah, they're all feeding each other. Yeah, there's quite. Do you know what? There's so many comparisons to what you just said to what happened to Zach last Sunday.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So what happened to Zach then?
Well, basically what's happened is we've got a Thetford Council watch, right? And Zach was banned from attending council meetings because he's very vocal. He's very passionate about what he speaks about. He was bringing up inappropriate books in the local library. We're challenging the hoax climate crisis. They're pulling money from the public purse to fund it. You know, we're trying to expose loads and loads of different things. Anyway, off the back of it, Zach's been banned. Now, on the Tuesday before, because he wants to see what's going on and he still wants to put his case across, so to speak, he actually got up on the window and he's actually looking at the meeting through the window. And it's quite an iconic photo now because he stood at the window like that and he looks like Christ.
Okay, good.
So anyway, so the police have been called and for his own safety. And they said, look, come on, get down. And he got down and that was that. There was another altercation going on out of shot where a member of the public was accusing the mayor's husband of certain things. And that escalated. Off the back of that, there was a not a little bit of argy-bargy, but a bit of to-ing and fro-ing between the police, the other altercation, and Zach said, hey, you can't do that. So anyway, off the back of it, that all dispersed, that all went away. The following Sunday, Zach is down at the stand in the park. And these two coppers have come up to him and said, we need you to come and have a chat with us about what happened outside the council building. They're accusing him of assaulting a police officer and preventing an arrest. Right. And he's like, well, I don't consent. You know, I'm not gonna engage with you. You know, I'm just Zach. I'm not who you think I am. And they basically gave him an option. You either come and volunteer to talk to us or we arrest you.
Yeah.
Right. So he said, look, I'm going to come up at my convenience. So this Sunday just gone, we've all gone up to the police station just to give him a bit of support. And he's refused to go into the police station. He said, I'm all right to stand out here and have a chat, but I'm not going to go into the police station. And they said, well, if you don't volunteer a chat in the police station, we're going to arrest you. So that's like saying, well, if you don't come in and talk to us, we're going to shoot you. It's the same thing, isn't it? There's Hobson's choice. So anyway, so they've arrested him. They've dragged him off to an investigation centre 12 miles down the road in Bury St Edmunds. They've chucked him in a cell for 19 hours. Now, all this time, he's saying, I am Zach. I am not who you think I am. I do not consent. I'm not playing your game. And anyway, so periodically, they're going into his cell. They're saying, you know, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want
He said, I even refused a piece of toilet paper. He said, I'm having nothing off of you. Anyway, 19 hours they left him in there. So, of course, he's, watching the clock thinking, right, 24 hours, they got to let me out. They've come in at the 19-hour mark and said, right, we need your photographs and your prints and this, that, and the other. We're off to the magistrate's court. He said, you ain't going anywhere with me. He's saying, I'm taking nothing off of you. You ain't having my photos. You ain't having my prints. You ain't having nothing. So, of course, they've slammed the door shut again. Next morning, they've come in and dragged him off to Ipswich Magistrates Court.
Yeah.
Him in a cell there for 9 hours. So, anyway, now he's thinking, right, I'm in the court building. What's next? So they've opened the door and they've taken him into the courtroom. Right now, he thought he was just going in the courtroom. They've actually put him straight in the dock. So of course, he's kicked off about being in the dock in their jurisdiction. I'm not in your jurisdiction. Get me out of here. I don't mind standing anywhere in your room, but I am not standing in the dock. I do not stand under your jurisdiction. Are you trying to administer my trust without my consent?
Yeah, so. Let me just stop you there because I don't. This is one thing I don't get involved with. When you start getting involved with the free man of the land stuff,
yeah,
right.
We're just talking.
You're fucked.
Yeah, we're just talking about rights and stuff now. Yeah. So anyway, because he's kicked off, they've taken him back in and offered him a duty solicitor.
Right.
Now, this is the funny part of it, right? So the duty solicitor's turned up straight out of uni, and he's like, I can help you, and he's saying, I don't want your help. I'm all right on my own. He's saying, you're part of the problem. You're part of the system. And he's saying, look. He said, if I can help you, if you go in there and sort of like plead guilty, I can get you half of what they want to give you. He said, I don't want anything that they're going to give me. I'm having none of what they're going to give me. I'm not consenting to anything. So with that, Zach, he's Diamond. He said, do you understand what law means? The acronym. And this solicitor started to look at him like, and he's accused Zach of being mentally unstable.
Yeah.
Which is a great one they use, isn't it? Mentally unstable. He said, I'm perfectly sane, and you obviously don't know what you're talking about. Can you tell me the acronym of land, air, and water? Of law. And he said, land, air, and water. And he said, this solicitor's looked at him like, anyway, Zach, he's gone, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? He said, I don't want your help. And with that, the solicitor started to put his stuff away, shaking his head, and he's left. Now, off the back of this, because Zach stood his corner and never admitted to anything and never really opened his mouth about it, never gave consent, they've let him off of this charge of assaulting a police officer. But now they reckon they've got video evidence of him preventing an arrest of another. So we're just waiting for that to happen. But basically the whole thing is because he kept his mouth shut about the whole incident, they've had to drop it.
So let me go back over a couple of things. So my consideration of this, right, and looking at what you've just described with Zach, when they say to you, you can come in voluntary or we're going to arrest you, there's no such thing as voluntary under that. That means you're automatically under duress, right? Right. So all you do is say no comment. Zach shouldn't have said anything to the police officer, right? Once you start that, which is one of the reasons why I disagree with the free man of the land stuff, you should not say anything at all, right?
Yeah.
So there's a number of things there. I mean, if they've took you straight into the dock without telling you what you're being charged for, right? That's unlawful, because how can you defend against anything if you don't know what you're charged with, right? So, which is an important part of the process, right? And there is a process for all this. And again, if you go out and the observance of due process goes back to 1384, right? It's still law in this country. You can actually say it. You can actually read from the law and say to them, observance of due process, 1384, what does it say? If anyone goes out of this process, it's null and void, right? That's it. And there is a big thing about null and void. So without getting into any of that, there's a number of things I would say. And this was talking to someone else that does a similar thing to me, but in a different way, right? I don't know, because I haven't come and had a look or got, because I deal with the English Constitution. But there is someone else. His name's Clive Edwards, right?
Yes.
I think he's been on your show, right? Well, so when they start keeping you out, let's go back to the origination of why this all kicked off in the first place. Zach, quite rightly, the council and the council chamber is a miniaturisation of what used to be the English Parliament. There is no such thing as an English Parliament anymore. It's gone, right? You can get it back, but the whole point of what I'm trying to say is each shire and county independently manages itself, right? It's actually where the common law comes from, right? Because so you've got a situation, I don't know, because I haven't read it, and again, some people think that I'm some sort of fucking encyclopedia. I'm not, right? Your local council, if you spoke to someone like Clive Edwards, would say to you, your local council has a constitution. You need to read it. The constitution, and again, if in the constitution it says every local person, blah 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 blah, has the right to be in the council chamber in the gallery, right? I don't know if it says this. What I'm saying is, if it does say that, right, what you should be looking at is your local council's constitution and how they've gone against it. Because if they've then, whatever they've done with if it's policy, a decision or whatever, if they've gone against the council constitution, which is to restrict his access to that chamber, that's what you should be looking at. And then if you extrapolate that, it goes back to the English constitution, where you have a right to know what's going on. If they're making decisions and doing things, then you need to understand it. So, but that's the first thing. So I would always look at that. What this is doing, what I'm trying to explain to people is, you need to get away from the free man and the land bullshit, right? And use the Constitution, which is there to protect you, right? Because that is the ultimate law. The Constitution is the ultimate law, and they can't go against that. If they do, that's where you have then got rights against them. That's where you can challenge them, and the worst way to challenge them is to take them into any civil court, because we're talking now about civil liberties, right? And you create a case against them for private right injury. That's what people are not doing anymore. That's what they do in America all the time, right? It's a big business in America because they've continued with the common law, right? So the real common law is someone acts against you in your civil liberties. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a private individual or someone, a crown servant or someone operating for on behalf of the state or the local council. You then have a right of claim against them, and that's what you should be looking at. So getting back to the police, there's probably some things that you're not aware of. I did a lot of research into this. It was quite funny. But when they start talking about assaulting an emergency worker, they brought that in, if I remember rightly, and I ain't got any notes or because I went right into this. They brought that in 2018 or 2019, and they brought it in because the National Health Service workers were being assaulted when they went out and in an ambulance, and you've got a paramedic, and the paramedic is, trying to help someone, and some geezer's drunk and punches the woman or the man in the mouth or whatever. That's an assault of an emergency worker, right? That's what it was brought in for. That's why it was passed in Parliament, right? Because prior to that, you always had assaulting a police officer. You always had, because it comes under normal standard assault stuff, except if you do it to a policeman or a police constable, it's worse, right? In terms of the way the system will judge you on it. But to cut a long story short, as soon as they brought this in, I can't remember the figure. It was something ridiculously stupid. Something like 6 cases were brought against people for assaulting a National Health Service worker, right? There were 18,000 cases of assaulting a police constable within something like a year. It was blatantly obvious that the police are abusing that law and that act of Parliament, right? And there's something else in the background that once they get that done, they then start getting payouts, right? Right. So the police. So as soon as they say, "Oh, found guilty of assaulting an emergency worker, a police constable," right? All of a sudden they get $2,000.
Yeah. And if it was 2019, what's the chance of it being the year before COVID?
Right. So that's the first thing to remember. There are a number of elements, and I did have a case involving this. Charlie Staples was a great.
Yes.
I mean, that's what they did to him, like assaulting an emergency work. When in fact it was in reverse. He took it all the way to the Crown Court, right? And because of the offence. So what Zach must understand, right? Shut the fuck up. Don't speak to him.
That's right? Very hard for Zach.
Right. Well, that's again. People who don't understand what's actually going on, you can sound clever, you can sound authoritative. You know, some people, solicitors, barristers, may turn around and say, you look like you've got an insanity problem or whatever, right? All of them things, right? They can't say any of them things if you shut the fuck up, right? That's just as simple as that. The problem you create for them is twofold, right? The first is that when you say nothing whatsoever, right, absolutely zero, they cannot charge you with anything. Unless if they say they've got video evidence of it, right? But even so, if they go to the next stage and they charge you with that, right, you then go to court and say not guilty for that offence that you're now talking about, assaulting an emergency worker. That's an indictable offence, right? So what do I mean by that? It's not summary only. In other words, it's not just in front of the magistrates. You can then ask for a jury, and then you ask for your jury, and you explain the situation to them and say, like, and if they use video evidence, you've got to look at the video evidence. They'll cause a load of problems, but there's a secondary element to this, and I just want to make sure people are clear in what I'm saying. You're going to, they'll either discontinue the case, or he's going to go before a jury in the same way as Charlie Staples did, who defended himself, who did exactly as I told him, who ended up having a judge saying to the jury under his directions, if you consider Mr. Staple has been tortured, you must find him not guilty. Right? That's the first time that those words have been, under direction from the judge, has been put to a jury. Right? And what you've got to understand is that jury come back and give him a unanimous not guilty. Right? Unanimous not guilty.
That was what you went in on, wasn't it? It was the Tortures Act.
Yeah, so it's the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture, which is now part of this other case that we've got in the High Court at the moment, where the Royal Mail haven't delivered our leaflets because it told everyone, because our pledge to the people was we will pursue prosecutions against judges, police officers, councillors, social services, everyone involved with the rape, murder and torture of white working class English children all over this country, all of the authorities associated with that, we will pursue them under that act. And by the way, just to make sure everyone's listening, it's an indictable only offence, meaning it can only have a jury. And on conviction, it is a mandatory all-life sentence. Right, so now people all of a sudden have started to realise, hang on a minute, I never knew that existed. until we started telling people, right? Now, all of a sudden, judges, barristers, solicitors, police, chief constables, everyone associated with this crime, right? All of a sudden, they're looking at a life sentence. And you don't think they're going to be a bit worried about that, right? Right. So again, if you look at that, and then you look at what we're doing, and look at the Glorious Revolution, what did they say? All these people were corrupt. And it was the non-enforcement of our constitution that caused the problem. That's why you've got to guide these people. Stop talking about this free man of the land bullshit. Understand what your constitution is and attack using your constitution, right? So get into the next part of this. Let's say Zach, they say, right, we're going to discontinue, no case to answer, right? Or it goes to a jury, right? Now, for the sense of what I'm about to tell you, if they pursue him and it goes to a court case, or if they charge him and they've done this and they've nicked him and they've put him in a cell for a few hours, right? Most people like Zach don't do anything after that. Once he walks away and he's got a not guilty, like the geezer I just spoke to, he's got a not guilty, right? I said, right. I said, now you've got up to 6 years to sue the police personally, right? Which is another thing that we've done with Charlie Staples, right? So we're now in the High Court with Charlie Staples, and we're presenting to the court that they are not vicariously liable. In other words, the chief constable. You've got the chief constable and 4 individual police officers. Actually, there's 2 sergeants, 2 constables, and the head of the Metropolitan Police, right? So there's 5 of them. And now what we're saying is, okay, now you're individually responsible, because that's what your oath says. And under the common law and under our constitution, you have committed this civil liability against me, right? And this is how much. And we want, I don't know, £400,000, and each one of you are going to pay it.
So in that case there, so they actually did assault him, didn't they? The cop was actually with Charlie Staples. So in this situation with Zach, what they've done is they've accused him of it, or this particular officer has accused him of it, and then withdrawn it,
right?
So
that's what they've done with Charlie Staples originally. They charged him with assaulting an emergency worker, right? Because there was no evidence of it whatsoever. In fact, it was the complete reverse, that the police had assaulted him, right, in the prone position as well, which means handcuffed face down on the floor, which, by the way, is illegal, right? On its own, that is illegal, to use violence against someone who can't defend themselves, and you've put them into what's known as an asphyxiation position. So, in other words, you are risking killing them. They will suffocate if you use violence against someone who is prone position, because you can't breathe. When your hand's behind your back and you're flat down on the surface, it creates a problem for your breathing, right? So getting back to what you just said there, what they said was, if I remember rightly, they come back and then they said attempted assault on an emergency worker, right? So now they've changed it again, right? By the way, he got a unanimous not guilty on it. But don't forget where this all started from. Was he was coming to see me at Trafalgar Square, and we was on a big anti-COVID, an anti-lockdown, right? So you have got the right under English law to freedom of assembly, freedom of expression. It's all in the Houseby's Laws of England, right? So again, to the free man of the lands out there, go and read the fucking Houseby's Laws of England. Right? Do yourself a favour and read the real law, right? You only need a handful of us to do it. So a lot of them people are very clever, right? They've just been pushed into the wrong direction. The right direction is the Constitution. The right direction is the Houseby's Laws of England. The right direction is the Houseby Statutes of England, and statutes are law, right? And I'm not suggesting that every part or every law is lawful. That's not what I'm saying, right? But it's because people don't understand what the law is. They can't challenge primary law because they don't understand what the Constitution is. If they understood the Constitution, they would take back control. but they're not doing
knowledge is dangerous.
Yeah. So
no, exactly.
going back to this accusation against that, surely that is if she's accused him of it and then they've dropped it because there's no evidence of this.
Yeah.
Is that a breach of was it the Criminal Courts and Justice Act 2015, Section 26? Where they're overstepping their powers and
So now you're thinking on the right lines. So if someone has said this happened and withdraws it, right, completely, and it's obvious bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Then you start onto the road of malicious prosecution, which is a very, very, very serious offence.
Yeah.
Right? But from malicious prosecution, you've got two elements. You've got you've got malfeasance in public office, misfeasance in public office, which is a serious criminal offence and carries a life sentence. Right? The public are not being made aware of what is there to protect you. Right? And then what you've got is these groups of solicitors and barristers, right? Excuse my French, who are complete and utter fucking wankers, right? They are the enemy, right? And I keep saying to people out there, when this goes the way I think it's going to go, it won't just be the police that the people will be looking for. It will be the solicitors and barristers.
Yeah.
There's only a handful, and I mean a handful, of solicitors and barristers that get it and are with us. The rest are not, right? They're part of this process. I mean, if I said to you, a barrister that will turn up to defend you, so if I was involved with your case, which obviously I'm not, right? The difference between me and a barrister, I would spend 3-4 weeks researching that case. I would be going through every single law, going right the way back through all the authorities, right? To give you the best possible defence there is, right? Because that's what a judge should be looking for. Why is it in the past that we wouldn't have done anything to this person? Well, it's because of all these authorities, right? The difference with a barrister is he tends to turn up 10 minutes before you're about to go in the court, reads the prosecution paperwork and says, well, instead of giving you 2 years, I might be able to get you 8 months, right? That's what they do. And he gets paid whether you go down or walk out to the pub. He doesn't care. He's not interested. They're part of the problem. That's what I'm trying to say to you. So getting back to that situation. So if Zach kept his mouth shut, goes into court and don't listen, doc or no doc, right? I mean, my personal opinion is they shouldn't have had him in the dock, because if they haven't given him anything so he understands what he's been charged with, he shouldn't have been put in a dock. Right, but nothing to do with the free man of the landy stuff. I do not consent or stand under and all that stuff. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about there is a process, and the process is for you to stand in a dock. You must be charged with something. You must be told what it is of the action against you, and if they don't do that, that's unlawful. You can't do that. Standing someone in a dock and saying, well, we're going to accuse you of this. So where's the process that led to that? Where is it? It's not there.
Hey, I've got a question for you. What do you think about the mixing up of grammar in names? You know, so they're trying to actually speak to you like in an all caps, but they write to you in a lower case and all this sort of stuff. What's your opinion on that?
Load of bollocks.
Yeah?
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because John Harris, who I, years and years and years and years ago, watched these videos, right? The bit they're not telling you is John Harris come out with all that, right? You can go and find it, right? Go and find it on YouTube. He then tells people it's a load of bollocks. He told people it's a load of bollocks, but no one is showing that video. And then not long after that, he committed suicide, right? And what John Harris said, I like John Harris because he was a carpenter, right? He was a normal, everyday working man. He was highly intelligent. People used to sit there, it's very, very similar to the free man of the land stuff. They used to sit there and listen to him, but he actually told people it's a load of bollocks. It's all bollocks. And what really upset him, and I can see it because I see it like that, right? What he said, what really upset me are people committing criminal offences and then trying to use what I was saying to get out of committing a criminal offence, right? Listen, if you commit a criminal offence, I don't give a fuck how they write your name. They can write it fucking backwards. They can tattoo it on your fucking forehead if they want, right?
Absolutely.
Did you commit the offence or not? It's a different question to say to someone that the offence doesn't exist because it's unlawful. But then you'll get these other people that will say, well, because it is written in statute, it's not law. Well, that's not directly true, right? Because the common law offence of murder was never written up in law. It's a common law offence, right? It's fucking very obvious. You can't kill someone, right? When I say kill someone, I mean murder, right? Murder is unlawful. It's a common law offence, but in some countries they've got it written down, right? But it's a common law offence. That's the difference between. And again, without going into too much, it is awkward because so many people have been brainwashed. I mean, I'm going to be fucking relentlessly attacked for even saying it on this show, right? But it ain't my fault. Listen, there's nothing you can do about certain people being brainwashed. There's nothing you can do about that. That's why I just ignore them and laugh, right? Whatever. You just go and do what you get. I can go and build an house. Can you? No. Right. Well, fuck off then. Go and get some brains somewhere, right? The difference, getting back to what I'm just saying there. So a lot of these free man and landers believe that the only law is the Magna Carta, which is complete and utter bollocks, right? And they don't understand that the Magna Carta or the Great Charter is the earliest form of statute, right? And then when you try and explain it to them, they go, no, that ain't right, that ain't right. You say, no, it is right, because we didn't have a parliament. What we had was King in Council. And King in Council was how, not just the Great Charter, but the Charter of Liberties. And the only reason the Magna Carta come about was because the King went back on the Charter of Liberties, and then you've got the Charter of the Forest, right? And you've got all these charters. They're all statutes, but it wasn't called a statute. So in other words, what I'm trying to say to people is this: the name the name for a law is charter. It then changed, right? It then changed after the first statute of Westminster in 1275, because they expanded the franchise to the people, not to all of us, because we didn't get a vote until, like the late 1800s, early 1900s. When I say we, I mean working people, right? We were seen as second-class citizens, but what we could rely on was our laws. So we weren't bothered. As long as you didn't take the piss out of us, right? In other words, banging us up, locking us up, hanging us for all sorts of things, we just get on with it, right? But leave us alone. But making sure people understand this. So at 1275, that's when you actually got the process today of what we call statutes, right? And so they was the same as charter. They're the same. This charter and a statute are the same thing. The process was slightly different, right? Which means you had king and castle for a charter. And by the way, charters are still in existence today. Corporations are still in existence today, right? We've still got corporations. But again, part of this case that I'm arguing in the High Court to do with the election, people don't realise the king himself, right? The monarchy, and it tells you this in Housby's Laws of England. This is the bit that I think so hilarious, right? It actually tells you, right? And it tells you that the monarchy itself is a legal fiction. It tells you that. It says that them words. It's a legal fiction, right?
So based on that, what you just said about corporations, it says that no man has the right to impose his will on another. That's just yeah. So when you're talking about corporations or statutes or legislation and stuff like that, if somebody had to write that legislation, didn't they?
Yeah, but there's set rules for writing legislation, which is being ignored.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm saying to you. I'm not saying to you. So the problem you got with the free man of the land stuff is they take 5%. Chris has already said it. A little knowledge is dangerous, right? They take 5% of what the truth is and pack it out with 95% bullshit. Whereas if the people really understood what our laws were and our constitution, how you've just hit the nail on the head, right? You've just hit the nail, because I say this to people, right? They go, yeah, well, this law, it shouldn't have that. And I said, yeah, so who's the people who should have stepped in and stopped it? Yeah. Do you know who it is? The law draft, not the law drafter.
Us. Don't you think it's us that should step in and?
Well, if you was a law drafter, going back to a barrister, if you was a law drafter, before the draft is put for its first reading, you're the person who writes it. You should know the Constitution inside out, but they don't. They're not taught it, right?
Yeah.
So you would have more knowledge. You would have more knowledge if you understood the Constitution than what a legal drafter in Parliament has. But if you go back 300 years ago, right, the drafters were very careful in what they put in there. They wouldn't even allow Parliament, if there was a bad part in the law, they would remove it. They would say that can't go in there, it's unconstitutional, right? And they'd remove it. That your problem is every element of Parliament has now become corrupt. And it's through a lack of knowledge of what our true legal history is. But once you so again, I don't want this to come across as too negative, because your group is a fantastic group. And I know that there are people in your group, right, that if they sat down even for 4 weeks non-stop and read 3 books, right, they could come out and say, and I know what they'd say is, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And you would have solid knowledge to back it up on. I'm not suggesting you wouldn't have a fight in the courts, because you go up against the magistrate and they're like nodding dogs for the system. You go up against most judges, they're nodding dogs for the system. I mean, you can see what they're doing. Everyone's now on social media up in arms because they're going to get rid of juries. I was talking about this 3 years ago. It's not new. I mean, they took out most of our jury trials, believe it or not, civilly, well into the 19th century. There's things they've took out of our legal system. I'll give you an example: grand juries, right? Why did they? So when I talked to a solicitor, he went, "Yeah, because it was being abused." I said, "What do you mean being abused?" He said, "Well, grand juries were indicting, ministers and people of the state." I said, "That's what it's fucking for. That's what it's for, right?"
Because also jury people have, not only can they say, yes, you're guilty or innocent, but they also have the power to say, this law is bullshit, get rid of it.
So you're right in what you're saying, but only on an individual case, right? So if you stand in front of a jury and a tick box of administrative law, which we shouldn't have, right? So there's 2 things in especially in a criminal case, right? There's something called actus re and mens re, right? Actus re means, is this a criminal offence? If you do this, is it a criminal offence? Yes, right? Mens re is guilt in mind. Did you know, and did you intend to do it, right? Which is why there's a difference between manslaughter and murder, right? So if you're coming at me, or not, if I'm going at someone, they've really pissed me off and I hit them over the head with a fucking hammer, right? And then I turn around to a jury and say, I didn't mean to kill them, but they're dead, right? The jury's going to look at that and say, well, if you hit someone over the head with a fucking hammer, it's fucking obvious you intended to kill them, right? So you're not guilty of manslaughter, you are guilty of murder, right? And that's a crucial point. Let me kill that phone. So on the other side of the fence, if you're in a punch-up with someone, right, it's just a fight, right? When I say it's just a fight, you shouldn't be violent, right? But you're having a fight, you chin someone, right? It goes backwards, and I know this has happened to many, many people. They've gone backwards unconscious, smacked the back of their head on a curb, and it's killed them. It's the equivalent of hitting them with an hammer. But it was they fell backwards, you've punched them. Are you still guilty of an offence? Well, manslaughter. You didn't mean to kill him, and you'd be sitting on. And I know people who have done it. They're sitting in the dock crying their eyes out because they've killed someone, right? And they've got to live with that. After they have to live with that, and you can see the remorse. You can see, I didn't mean to kill him, right? And then the next avenue for that is self-defense, right? So if a geezer's coming at you, he's bigger than you, he's uglier than you, he's fitter than you, whatever, and you've stuck a nut on him, right? Because it's the only way you're going to stop him, right? So you've used in your mind reasonable violence in defence, right? But he then falls down, drops down, smashes his head on a curb and dies. Are you now? That's the argument of self-defence, and then the jury says, "Well, hang on a minute. No, we find that it was self-defence, and he's used reasonable force. There was no one to know that he was going to fall backwards." So you've now got the three elements of it. That's a discussion that, in some ways, mens rea and actus rea, right? Because they'll say, "Is a person dead?" Yes, right. So someone's caused the death. There's the act, right? Mens rea then goes into how did it happen, right? And that's what you're discussing with a jury. And again, if you've got the wrong type of barrister, who don't like you could easily be going to prison when you shouldn't be.
That's the good thing about like you say, the legislation or the law doesn't apply to that case. It's yes, the law's there, but not on this occasion. That's what you're saying about where a jury can.
Well, so getting back to a jury and the individual cases, I can't think of one. There are many. So under a jury trial, the only thing that cannot be appealed and by the way, technically this is now pear-shaped, and I can go into detail about it. Technically, if a situation was to arise where, and a barrister wouldn't do this for you, you'd have to do it yourself, right? You can explain to the jury. People don't realise that the only thing that cannot be appealed is a not guilty verdict. You cannot appeal a not guilty. The state cannot appeal a not guilty verdict, right? So if the jury gives you a not guilty in their own conscience, gives you a not guilty. So what do they consider? In your individual case, they consider the law, and this is where a judge says they're not allowed to, right? That's bollocks. The case has already been heard. I can't remember what case it was now. It's on the tip of my tongue. But there's a plaque in the Old Bailey that says it, right? So it's adhered to even today. The point I'm trying to make to you is, if you stand in front and they look at the tick box and they say, yeah, well, the offence has been committed, but we believe the circumstances of this case, we should find him not guilty, I would have done the same thing. So in that particular case, that's why I'm saying every case is on its own merits, right? And you stand there and you go, bang, right? And then a jury would say, not guilty. The reason why it's it's gone pear-shaped. There was another thing in law, which is basically you can't have something called double jeopardy, right? So you can't be tried for the same case twice, right? That was reversed. Again, this is so dangerous because people don't realise that was reversed in the Stephen Lawrence case, right? So a minority group reversed the ancient laws of England, right? Because, and I'm not going to get into details about Stephen Lawrence and all the and racism and whatever, right? I'm talking about the law, right? And they got not guilty, and you can't try them twice. But what they did was they created a law and made it so you could try them twice. That goes against the principle of double jeopardy.
Yeah.
Right. That again, what a lot of these people are not. You know, the reason we do constitutional seminars is so the difference between me and these other people. I don't stand up there. I actually show in banner form, printed out our laws, and then I'll get out the law books and show people. Right. So it is to empower them to use the Constitution. So getting back to the original part of this conversation with Zach. You as a group, I wholly agree with Clive Edwards, right? I wholly agree with him. We do the same thing, but in a different way, right? But it's two regiments moving in the same direction. That's the way I describe it, right? So what Clive Edwards does is he says go back to the Constitution. Like I'll give you another. Go back to the Constitution. So if I was your group in Norfolk and I've got a particular affiliation with Norfolk. Right, I like Norfolk as much as I like Devon, right, or Suffolk, right. They're very similar in the way that people think, right, and it is your groups of people that will change England. It's central Parliament is on its way out, but it's only on its way out where people like you, this channel, people like you, what you're doing, getting involved, right. And actually doing something instead of the nonsense in the background. All you've got to do is tweak what you're doing. So Clive, without a doubt, and I'll give you another example of it. I don't think I've said this before. I'll give you another example that people will, a lot of people watching this will understand what I'm talking about, right? And this is crucially important. The National Health Service of England, has a constitution, right? It has a foundational group of laws that govern the National Health Service, right? But they don't want you to know that. So what they do is when your elderly parents are sitting in their house and they've become sick and ill and may have all these different ailments, etc. And then the council comes along and says, we're going to put you in a care home. And what we're going to do is we're going to sell your home and pay for that care, right? That is illegal. It goes against the English Constitution in reference to the National Health Service and the Constitution of the local council. How do I know this? Because a very intelligent man wrote a very long and detailed article for the Daily Telegraph. And because it referenced the Constitution, it automatically strikes my interest, right? What is he saying here? And they basically did the same. This is one man, right? This is just the difference with listening to the bullshit or listening to someone who's done it, which is why I like Clive, which is why I like this guy who wrote the article for the Daily Telegraph, right? And obviously our members and what we do. So cut a long story short, he challenged his local authority, meaning local council, and he also challenged the National Health Service. And it turns out there's a whole process that they had skipped, right? And I think they nicked something like £250,000 off him or off his parent, right? He got it all back. All because he understood the Constitution, because he understood that there was an overriding set of laws that they couldn't go against with policy, right? So when you get, again, I'm just making sure everyone's understanding it. It doesn't matter what the Constitution is. A Constitution or a framework agreement, right, is crucial. And you need to understand that. So for Zach's cases, I would always return. Can he actually? Why is it they've done this? How have they done it? If I was playing up, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Zach, right? So let's say I go into Parliament, right? Imagine Parliament is a bigger version of your council chamber. That's all it is, right? If I go into Parliament tomorrow, I'll go into the public gallery and I'll start banging on the window, screaming. Do you know who comes up to take me out? The sergeant at arms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the speaker that instructs the sergeant at arms, and then I can be held in contempt of Parliament if I'm disrupting proceedings, right? Well, a similar thing operates for local councils. You need to find out what it. You need to find out what that is.
Yeah.
Well, you need to find that out, and that's what I'm saying. If you stand there and come out and say with all this other stuff, you need to actually delve down into the law again without too much emphasis on Clive. So Clive, made an application technically to the planning, and what was said in the Constitution is you need to notify what. So he sent them an email and they ignored him. Well, so it's their fault. It's not his fault, right? But even the basics can get you out of trouble. It's just understanding it. That's all I'm saying. So getting back to that's the way I would do it. See, but your group and what you're doing, I don't like to say this because I'm very spiritual, right? But I have a vision of your group. Your group is very similar to Devon, right? And in the past, it's been our people from them counties and shires that have rose up. It's a bit like Michael Flynn, the general in America, and he says local action is national action. Do it locally.
Yeah, from the bottom up every time.
From the bottom up.
Hmm.
But you've already got more than the beginnings. A lot of these other areas are too far gone with infiltration of free man of the land, which I consider to be a government-inspired psyop of communism. Them places are too far gone. They targeted stand in the parks because standing in parks are dangerous. It's the same as why they targeted our pubs, because every revolution technically has always started in an alehouse. Mm. So what do? You price out a working man from the alehouse, and people like us can't sit in a pub talking. Except we've now got.
Do you think? I mean, not calling it free man on the land, but do you think there's also an option to just step out of the, like the Constitution and statutes and all that? Is there a way from all of that?
No. Well, yeah, there is.
To go to sea.
Exactly that. That. Right. So if I listen to people and they say, I've got a camper van, I ain't having this, I ain't having that, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. All bullshit. The only way you can get out of it, right? And again, the free man of the landers would then say, yeah, well, then you've got Admiralty law. Admiralty law is an extension of the common law. Anyone who knows anything about the law, we as England, right? And there's a difference between a dominion and a colony, right? The British colonised, central control, right? Same as the Romans. Whereas the English didn't. The English was about dominions. Dominions means self-determination. Dominions means self-governance, right? So England has lost its status because the British have removed it, right? I could show you precedents now being set all over where the colonies have left the British Empire, right? Guess what they're applying in their courts? The English common law. And they're applying constitutional rights in all of their courts. I'm seeing them all the time, right? The only people who are not getting their rights upheld are the English. Why? Because we're still a colony of the British Empire. And it's the British ruling elites. So in some ways, I understand why the free man of the land are thinking and doing what they're doing. In other words, their heart could be in the right place, but their method of operation is completely wrong. Because you're never going to get anywhere. All you're doing is assisting the enemy. That's what gets me. You're just assisting the enemy. Stop it. Fucking go and look at your constitution. Have a look at what your real rights are, and then you'll get people making up rights. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, no, that don't exist. You know, you can go through the Housebury Laws of England. It tells you what your rights are. That's all you got to do is go back. And again, there's enough of them books in circulation for people to learn it. So I don't get me wrong. I'm not having a go. There is a difference between me. I've only ever in the court system. We take back our own court system, right? All that stepping out of court. I mean,
you could go back to like the times of Harold Godwinson and what have you, when you lived on the land of Albion, and you know, and we know that everything that we see now came from that invasion. So are we living by the rules of that invasion?
We are currently more so than ever before living under the rules of a Norman invasion.
Yeah,
the Norman invasion of 1066 was a game changer for the English, because the Anglo-Saxons. So just to make sure you're aware of this, the Anglo-Saxons was the Angles and the Saxons were two Germanic tribes that come to England. We was asked to come here, by the way. The Picts actually asked us to help them because they was being invaded by another group of people. But that's another part of history, right? What you've got to understand is they created their own legal system, and the thing that interrupted that and started to cause problems was the European Union, or Europe's administrative system, which come from the Roman system, and then if you really understand, which is one reason why the English and the Protestants and the Germans created Protestantism, right, is because it was rebelling against the Roman Catholic system. And the Roman Catholic system is exactly what it says. The Roman system is, and still is, the Roman system is communism. There's three classes of people. There's three classes of people in the Roman system, right? You've got the patriots, the plebeians, and then you've got slaves. That's it. That's the three systems. And what they're trying to do is create you as slaves. You are slaves to that system.
Absolutely. Their system is also, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Yeah. Whereas,
I see that
the reverse.
I see that developing. You know, that's what they're trying to achieve here.
Well, that's exactly one of the reasons why they want to take out juries, and they started taking off juries. They've been doing it for centuries. The jury is the most powerful weapon against any form of arbitrary government, and that's why they want to remove it.
Yeah,
and they have done.
Yeah, and this is where the like the Community Assembly of the British Isles.
Yeah,
that's where they're trying to go. They're trying to step out from this Roman system that they're trying to instigate. They're trying to go back to the times of Harold Godwinson and 1066.
So the first thing to say about that group, I don't mean this in a negative way, by the way, and I want everyone to understand this. I like the Scots, I like the Welsh, I like the Irish, I like the Cornish, right? I live in a country called England, all right? I do not give a flying fuck about the Scots and what they do. They can import rapists galore. They can cut the throats of their own people if that is what they consider is the best, way to go forward, right? What I'm saying is leave the fucking English alone. That's it. Now, that's not me being negative to the Scots, the same to the Irish, the same and to the Cornwall people, right? What I am saying to people is when you start talking about Britain as a whole, right, that is nonsense.
Yes.
And that group is doing exactly that. And just to make sure everyone is aware of this, the Romans they called Britain Britannica, right? Britannia. It was the Romans who named this island, right? Prior to that, it was Albion and various other elements to it. But it was the Romans who did that, right? People should be aware that the Holy Roman Empire, which is two separate things, and the Holy Roman See, right, which is the religious element of it, still consider Britannia as a province of Rome. So anyone in the background, that group you just mentioned, who talk about Britain as a whole.
No, they don't. No.
What?
No, the community assembly is about recognising. So, like they are now recognised as Cornwall as a land in their own right.
Cornwall is.
It is.
So
they're not saying they're against the Britain thing as well, because we know that's corporation.
Yeah, but so I've seen a couple of bits that they've done in the past. When you show Britain, right?
Because the Stanley Parliament is older than the British Parliament, isn't it?
Well, so if you show a map of counties or shires, and you should be going back to the original shires, right? Even counties shouldn't exist. They come from the Normans.
They do, yeah.
Right. So Norfolkshire, Suffolkshire, Devonshire, right? What you've got to understand is that is, and then each shire had its own governance system. And by the way, cities within those shires were then given charters of corporation. There's nothing wrong with corporations. It's the way the corporation is managed that causes the problem, right? So getting back to what I originally said, without this going on for too long, so Housby's Laws of England tell you that the monarchy is a legal fiction, right? There's only one person, for whatever the reasons were back in our past, there's only one person that cannot be civilly tried in this country, right? In this country, I mean England, and that's the monarch, right? So they can't be criminally charged. The king can do no wrong. But if you go back to a very famous case where the judge said, what was he? He said, the king doesn't maketh the law maketh the king, right? And what he was talking about was he's politely telling the king to shut up, stay in your lane, because it was the law that created you, right? And the law can decreate you if we want, which is exactly what I tell people. The common law can give you a republic or it can give you a monarchy, right? But getting back to that quick conversation, getting back to corporations. So we got a current case in the High Court, right, where the Royal Mail Group Limited are arguing that Emma Gilthorpe, who was the CEO at the time of the offence, right, shouldn't be named on the election petition, right? So they've made an application to have her personal name removed and just keep Royal Mail Group Limited, right, Group Limited on there. And I've said no. And they've said, why not? And I said, because under the common law, there's only one person in this country that cannot face trial or inquiry of the court, and that is the king. And Emma Gilthorpe is not the Queen of England. So therefore, she is liable. And again, this is where, and this is really important for people to understand. It's not complex. It's simple, but the free man of the land get this wrong in a big way, right? So the judge said to me, are you referring to agency and principle, right? And I said, no. And she looked at me, and basically what I said is, I'm referring to master servant, right? So if anyone knows anything about boats, they will understand that the skipper or the captain of that boat is the master of that vessel. Anything that happens on that vessel must go in the ship's log. Everything, right? And that's why the master of the vessel in international waters can marry you. He is the law, right? So if anything happens with a corporation and they create a policy that goes against your constitutional rights, the CEO of that corporation is personally responsible because they were responsible for the policy being created under their auspice as the master, right? I'm not talking about agency principle. Under the common law, master servant, right? And once you understand there's a difference between the two, and this is where I try and say to people, I don't often get in, I'll just tell people to shut up now. I don't even listen to the free man arguments, right? It's like I say, most you got some really clever people that have been distracted by that movement, right? I believe intentionally, right? So I just want to make sure that people understand there is a difference. So what happens is the free man of the landers talk about agency and put a notice to agent, this agent notice to principal. That all exists, right? But they use it out of context. They use it out of context. And very rarely do they ever talk about the master servant rules. And the master servant rules are just as powerful in the common law, right? And they are often, so the reason why the people would poo-poo them is because they never speak about that. Well, part of this.
So then you're like you were saying earlier on. So then you're mixing a maritime law with a law on the land, aren't you? A common law.
So the maritime law is the common law. That people don't realise it's the same thing. If you get up as a spokesperson, so in the old days they used to say every Englishman is a common lawyer, and the reason they said that, this was said in Hansard, the reason why they said that was because we was taught our rights. Even in Anglo-Saxon times, the mum's job was to, like we learn the times tables today in school, we used to, and you go 3 times 3, all right, and you go all the way up, right, and you'd stand there and you'd memorise the times tables. That's the way they used to do it, right? Well, in Anglo-Saxon times, the woman, the mum, would have the kids sitting there or whatever they was doing and rhyme through the laws of the land. So, because most people couldn't read or write, right? So they rhymed through the laws and then they understood the law of the land. And that, so what I'm trying to say to you is, when these people, getting back to that maritime law and all that, they're in some ways conflating it as two separate things. There are differences with maritime law, but it's mainly because of the problems with the sea. If you sunk your fucking boat tomorrow, right, and it's in international waters or it's in local waters, you've got to work out how to get the fucking thing up. It needs to be
resolved, yeah.
You can't just leave a fucking ship in a shipping lane, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to start affecting other people. And then you want to know, well, who caused the problem? If it's going to cost 5 other corporations, I don't know, 100 million, 200 million to pull it out the fucking water and get it out the shipping lane, right? Someone's got to be responsible for that.
So that's where maritime law is good, because it does do that. But then there's a contradiction when you're actually back on the land, so to speak. Then you're meant to be living under the rules of the land.
Yeah, but
so this is where you say they marry up.
Well, so technically you are living under. Because
you can't. What you're doing is you're saying you're bringing the maritime law into another jurisdiction, kind of thing.
No, because they're two separate jurisdictions. That's why. So again, this gets into jurisdiction is really important, but again, it is often misquoted and put in the wrong context by the common law of the land people. So 100%, one of the most important possible things you can think of is jurisdiction, because I mean you could have. Oh, let's think of an easy one. British Transport Police, right? If you look up their jurisdiction, they can only operate within such a radius of the railway lines. It was brought in for a specific reason. You know, and I've no doubt, I haven't seen it, but I have no doubt we had a similar system set up for the canals, right? But it's a separate jurisdiction. You wouldn't get someone from the Royal, you shouldn't get someone from the Transport Police willy-nilly coming out to another area and then saying, I'm arresting you for so and so and so and so. And then again, other people, the jurisdictions are important. So let's talk about the jurisdiction of an English person, right? So I'll give you an example. Whilst this is a violent example, and I don't particularly want to, let's not use violence. Let's say I'm sitting in front of you now, right? And I pickpocket Chris, right? And nick his money, stick it in me bin. You've watched it, right? What are you going to do? Are you going to call, I'm about to leave. Are you going to call a policeman, or are you going to arrest me?
I'm going to arrest you myself, or at least intervene.
Right. So that is the point, right? You have, under English law, the right to arrest. It's called a citizen's arrest, right? The only difference between you and a policeman, let's say you don't act, right? For whatever reason, right? You don't act. I say, see you later. I'm off down the pub with Chris's money. Right, I'll slip out the door, go in the boozer, and Chris goes, my fucking wallet's gone, right? And you say, yeah, well, I saw him do it, but I didn't want to say anything. I was a bit embarrassed or whatever, right? Not that would happen with you, but what I'm saying is, you've seen it. You've told Chris. You pick the phone up to the old bill, and you say, like, so and so and so and so, he's nicked this wallet. And the first thing they'll say to you is, did you actually see him steal it? And you would say yes. Right, they come round and they get a witness statement from you. Right, they'll stand there with their notepad and they'll write this witness statement out. Right, and then you say he's down a pub and he's just gone down there. He's spending Chris's money, buying lots of people champagne and all that. Right, or pints of Guinness if he didn't have enough money. Right, and then the copper would go right, and then he'd walk into my pub. Right, and he'd say, Graham Moore, blah 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 blah. He'd say, yeah. He said, I'm arresting you for stealing Chris's wallet. Right, and what he's acted on is something that we used to call in law an information. Right, that's what that witness statement was called, an information. He's acting on. So the only thing different in that situation between you, Bob, and a police officer is he's allowed to make an arrest via what's known as a general warrant, right? And the general warrant is the thing that he swore an oath to, and then they give him a warrant card. That's the only reason he has got a warrant card, is because he took an oath, and that oath means that he'll uphold the laws, you do this, and the sovereign, etc. I can't remember what the oath is exactly, but the only difference is he gets a warrant card, right, that allows him under general warrant to take an information and then to arrest someone, because to arrest and detain, you create a tort if you do it wrong, right? But what I'm saying is, you didn't even need to call a police officer. If you witness that crime, you can make that arrest, you can detain that person, and then the only reason you'd need the police to come along is, well, you don't even need to do that if you don't want to. You could privately prosecute. So Chris could then say, Bob has made an arrest. my wallet was stolen, and then you two would present your evidence in a magistrate's court, right? And then I would have to come because you do a private prosecution. You don't even need the police, right? You do a private prosecution for that offence, right? You say, bang, 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 bang. There it is. There's the information. There's the witness statements. I witnessed it. Chris is the victim. He's saying no, he did. You know, bang, bang. And then the magistrate, without even touching the Crown Prosecution Service, right, would find me guilty, and then send me to prison. You haven't even used a police officer. But if you do it the other way, and you say, well, I'm going to report this to a police constable, and then the police constable, by law, they have to act on the information, right, which they're not doing currently, right? So that's what I'm saying. But so a group like yours would be far better understanding that process. So I'm going to give you an example again, right? Going back to Zach, right? Because I think Zach is very important in this conversation, right? One, because he's got arsehole, right? He's got the bottle to stand up. Unlike these lemons who sit there sucking their fucking thumbs and crying their eyes out because their freedoms are being taken away. At least Zach is actually standing up, right? Even if he gets bits of it wrong, you can guide people, right? As long as they're not getting the guidance from fucking idiots. So on the other side of it, let's get back to what happened to him. He's saying it comes out, they haven't arrested him, right? I mean, you could even say, then he's seen them in an altercation with someone else. So as a stand-up person like Bob, right, instead of witnessing me stealing Chris's wallet, Zach is now witnessing police constables who are citizens, the same as me and you. Just because they've got a fucking uniform on, they're no different to us, right? The only difference is they carry a warrant card, right? And if they don't carry that warrant card, by the way, they can't arrest you. Unless they actually see you commit the offence, right? Because that's what gives them authority. The reason this led into this was because of jurisdiction, right? Technically, they haven't got any jurisdiction. So if what happened with Zach, right? If he comes out and he sees I'm going to give you another example of this. Remind me about batons and truncheons, right? If Zach sees three police officers for no reason whatsoever start to assault and abuse a member of the public, he can step in. He can step in.
Yeah, that's one part. That's one part of this that he claims that no warrant card was shown, no names, no nothing.
Right. So you got to be careful with this, right?
Yeah.
So
that's why I say claimed.
Right. So
this is hearsay.
I don't want people to think that the police have no authority whatsoever. They do, right? But largely they have the exact same authority as what you have as an individual.
Yeah.
The only difference with them is they take an oath, and it used to be they had to take 2 years as a probation officer. They weren't allowed to have unsupervised access to the public. And they had to do a 2-year stint with a police constable that had already gone through it. At the end of the 2 years, they had to take a constitutional exam.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they took an oath. And unless they passed their constitutional exam, they had no problems in their probation period. If they had any problems in their probation period, the police constable, who probably was a stand-up geezer, went, he ain't no good.
Yeah,
get rid of him.
Well, that's the difference now. Is now all they need is a degree in home economics and a course to go on.
Yeah. So again, it's the socialist communist system that is being deployed against the people, and people don't realise it. And the bribe to make them people act against you is their pension.
Yeah,
that's it.
Absolutely.
So getting back to that, so if he has witnessed, there is something called an unlawful arrest, right? If the guy's doing nothing wrong, and the police have arrested him, or they're harassing him, and they're in what's known as a freedom of assembly, right? There's nothing that they're doing wrong. The police can't do anything apart from that they've got an injured ego because you've told them to fuck off. Which, by the way, telling the police officers to fuck off is perfectly lawful, right? it's immoral, but it's not illegal to swear at a policeman, right? And this has already been proved in the High Court, right? I've already presented that case to another court and got awarded costs where the person asked me to another one of our members, because it was the whole case was a lie. So anyway, cut a long story short. So let me just explain it a different way. If you're on an assembly, remember what I said about Peter Lynch when we was in Rotherham and we was in this assembly. We was videoing. You could see the old Bill trying to create a riot, right? And I kept saying to people, stand back, stand easy, don't do what they're telling you to do, right? Listen to me. And then Peter Lynch come round and he went, oh, we're going on a march, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, I'm not going on it. All right. And he was trying he weren't trying to intimidate me. He was like, come on, what will you do? And I tried to say to him, Peter, you're walking straight into what they want, right? All the time you're standing here, right? They can't stop you, right? You can be shouting things out, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression. They can't do anything. As soon as you put your foot on that pavement and go on a march, they're going to nick you, right? Whether or not that is wholly lawful is another thing, right? I won't go into detail with that. What I'm saying is you're giving them the excuse. So again, there was a situation that I was in London where the old Bill pulled out battens, right? When we was just in a lawful assembly. If we had 20,000 of us, all right, so 20,000 of us who knew the law as well as I did, right? So if I instruct people, a bit like being in the army, right? Before you go on an operation, you'll be briefed. This is the mission. This is what we're doing. This is what you don't do, and then they have standing operation or standing orders, right? So you're restricted in what you can do. You need the same setup with when you go on a massive demonstration. You need to separate people out, not with this nonsense that some of these people are doing with the free man of the land. I'm talking about the real law, right? And you say to them, if we are in a freedom of assembly, and if we was doing this, and there was no lawful reason for the police to pull out battens, technically under the law, that is a threat of assault. That is an assault, right? So an assault is a threat of violence. If they was to hit you with that baton, that's battery, right? Trespass against the person, etc. If you're standing under your constitution and your constitutional rights and your common law rights to do what you're doing, and a large group of police officers did that, what I would say is if that situation happens, so in the old days we've done something else. We had something in our own groups. This is going back 30 years ago, right? We had our own groups. So we would have generals and sergeants and corporals, right? So we would structure ourselves. So when the order is given by the general, this is what you need to do, you've almost got a standard procedure which you move into. That's exactly what the police do, right? And you can see it, especially with the city police, right? If I was in a situation where I've got 30 police officers drawing their batons and we've done nothing wrong, I would give the instruction to the sergeants, right, captains, sergeants, etc., standing operation 1, right? What does that mean? Contain the police. So as citizens, you then contain the police. You do what they do to them, right? Contain them, right? Next instruction, disarm them, right? So you go around to every one of them police officers and say, strip your belt off, strip your gas off, strip your tasers off, and if there's people there with firearms, you would literally unload their firearms and take their firearms off them. That is how you deal with the police. But I haven't seen anyone with the organisation or the skills to be able to do it. But it is coming. I am seeing more and more people now starting to think about it. And I'm not just saying Norfolk, but you need people of military discipline to understand what it is they're doing and understanding that they're acting lawfully. I mean, I would go further. There was one point in London where we was well capable of thousands of us to contain 20 police officers, right? If it had been me, I would have stripped them naked and then sent them back to their force. Literally. So now walk back, start bollock naked, right? You're not harming them. You're just saying to them, who the fuck do you think you are? Right? But you need that structure. The problem you've got, and I don't want to go. So if you go back to what I originally said, not originally, but quite some time ago now in this conversation, we was only really given the vote in technically working people in the late 1800s, early 1900s. When we stood up for the vote, because working people didn't have the vote, right? The Cheshire Yeomanry, which is the equivalent now of the police, in effect, right, charged us 70,000 crowd who was asked to go there disarmed, right? And they charged the crowd, and they murdered 19 of us, even a baby. They bayoneted a baby, right? And all we was doing was, one, asking for the vote, and secondly, we was making a declaration not to pay tax, right? That's all we was doing. Nothing. There was no violence. Getting back to what my point is, Sir Robert Peel, I think it was about 19 years later, because it was still an ongoing subject, actually stated in Parliament that the people that should have been done for treason in the Petersfield event or action that the state took, and the people that should have been done for treason were the police constables in the crowd that agitated the crowd. So, in other words, Sir Robert Peel was telling people that police constables were in the crowd, were agitating, were causing violence. They're the people that you have to be careful of. Because when you get a group of us, say 20,000 of us, 100,000 of us, 1 million of us, right? You're going to get the state putting those agitators, and those agitators.
And we've seen them, yeah.
Right. Well, a lot of them agitators, and I need people to listen to what I'm saying, right? Because this has happened before. It's not new. Are free men of the land. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I know. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, I can tell you now, the police did it, and they did it at Greenman Common, where police officers was living and fucking the women and giving them babies, right? When they was fucking married and police constables. People need to understand what these people are doing, right? So you never know.
What I saw a lot of, like when we was doing the anti-COVID and the anti-jab stuff in London, was groups like Antifa, you know, who we know are funded by people way up the food chain. I'm not sure about the free. So I don't like the term even free men on the land, because I think that detracts from what goes on in the soul, so to speak.
Yeah, all I'm doing
as a general movement, those kind of people I think are fairly peaceful. I'm not sure they'd let themselves be recruited to agitate.
No. That's not what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you is many. You don't need many, but 5, 10, right? You'll have people that can stand up and they will say all this, you know, free man of the land stuff, and they're actually police officers. And I had one, but just to make sure you're aware of this, I had one in my house, right? And he was trying to set me up. It's only because of my experience, and I do mean experience, going back 30
But surely
years.
that's just because he's a copper.
Yeah, but he was pretending to be one of us.
Pretending to be, yeah.
But they
so
do
that's just
it.
infiltration, isn't it?
Yeah, it's infiltration, but what they'll do is they appear. So I'll give you another example, which is exactly the same. Is football violence, right?
Yeah.
Well, most of the football violence that you see today is actually created, and people drawing you into the fights, right? A big toughie standing there with all the tattoos and fucking whatever, swilling fucking beer, let's go at it and all that.
Yeah,
They're actually undercover police officers.
absolutely. Like I say, I saw it in Oxford when they were doing the 15-minute city stuff. You know, there was a group of lads that you could tell were nothing to do with the main bulk of the people that were there for that reason. And they were, come on, come down here. We found a way through. Let's go and smash up the council buildings. Let's go and do this. And you know, straight away you're like, well, we know exactly who you are. You know,
right. And exactly what you've just described happened January the 6th in America. That they call this, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out it was the FBI, it was all these other groups, and
open the doors,
and they opened the doors, and they was agitating, and they was drawing people in, and look what happened, and all that. That's all I'm saying to people.
Yeah.
But there's too many, and I meet them all the time, naive people that just, you know, it's a bit like if I was to say to you, I won't say it in case it goes on YouTube, but let's say you know, if you was to turn around and say that, you know, the government are going to create a pathogen, and but really and truthfully, the real pathogen is
they wouldn't do that, would they?
It's in that, right? And everyone, no, they won't do that. That you're fucking mad, you are, right? Well, so why are the people all dropping dead then? And why, you know, why are all these people got? And it's not just heart attacks, by the way.
Turbo cancers.
There's cancer, and there is a hell of a lot of kidney malfunction.
There's actually a lot of peer-reviewed stuff coming out now exposing that within their system.
Yeah, I mean, again, your kidneys go, you're dead, right? It's just, you know, and their objective is to make you suffer as long as possible, and a lot of this. You know, you people stood there and tried to start. That's why I go back to the safest place you can be is on a boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're not, pathogens don't travel in the air for thousands and thousands of miles. But again, there is so much going on. But you know, the groups that you've got, I mean, I don't get negative towards. If I can see that the group has got a good heart, but are being misled, then I try and advise them. But if the people advising them are still, you know, the most disappointing thing is you're never going to get anywhere. All the time you've been led up the wrong path.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, amongst our sort of group, our gang, we're self-feeding, if you like. We don't take advice we haven't taken advice from anywhere, really. I mean, you're the first guy that I've ever spoken to that has actually got a full knowledge of a particular subject. You know, we tend to be sort of self-feeding and scrabbling our way through on what we find out ourselves.
Yeah. Now, again, all you're looking for is, I mean, that's all I keep saying to people. Just leave us alone. We're not asking for much.
I'll go with that. That's all we want.
Let us lead our lives in peace and quiet.
Yeah. No. And again, it is happening. But so, Zach should do well. The strongest possible advice I'll give to anyone is to shut up. Don't say a word. And the amount of people that say, you know, when I listen to them, and some of them get disappointed when I said, I can't help you. You opened your mouth.
Yeah.
And they're going, yeah, but their favourite line is, I've got nothing to hide. I did nothing wrong.
They're looking for you to incriminate yourself.
Yeah. And the easiest way to incriminate yourself is to answer a single question.
No, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. We've just gone over 2 hours, so I don't want to be too much longer because the upload speed here is horrendous and I've got the kids to go and pick up. So thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. Thank you for joining me, Bob. It's been great.
It's been great meeting you, Graham, although it's over a screen.
But hopefully you should be coming to Thetford at the end of this month for the Truth Festival. Hopefully.
No, I am. That's directly after. I can't remember. What day is it?
18th and 19th.
Yeah, no, I'm coming up for both days. So I land back in England on the 15th, and then I'm getting ready and then coming straight up to you.
There you go. So you'll get to meet him in person. So brilliant. Drinks all round. Thank you very much, everyone watching this. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, look after yourselves. Bye for now.